let's talk about the AFC Championship game. Kansas City at Baltimore. I guess the injuries that are the biggest ones to watch are, will Marlon Humphrey or Mark Andrews be back? And then Joe Thuney got hurt in that game against the Bills. Suma, I want to start with you. Who's the more important player to get back for Baltimore, Marlon Humphrey or Mark Andrews? And is Joe Thuney a bigger injury than we're making it out to be, just given how much instability they've had at tackle this year between Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor, who is a penalty machine?
First question, absolutely Mark Andrews. I don't think that the style of offense that the Chiefs are playing right now, and especially played against Miami and yesterday against the Bills, really requires having top-tier talent at the cornerback position. I don't think that the Chiefs will consistently go after those cornerbacks. So absolutely, Mark Andrews. I think you just want to score points and points and points, and then try to let Patrick Mahomes drop back, and then let Mike McDonald somewhat cook in terms of how far you can cook against Patrick Mahomes. But I think that's going to be the recipe for the Ravens. You cannot get empty drives this week, so Mark Andrews would absolutely be my priority over Marlon Humphrey. On the other side, yes, Thuney might matter because he's super experienced, and Mike McDonald will try to throw everything at that pass protection that he possibly could. So might matter. Do we have any update on Willie Gay?
We don't yet. I didn't bring him up in the discussion because I happen to think Drew Tranquil and is a more than capable backup. Whereas with Thuney out, I don't know that they have a great replacement option. But yes, Willie Gay still questionable with the neck injury.
I would probably still want Willie Gay in there against that Ravens rushing attack. I think that's probably a super bad matchup for the Chiefs D after we saw what the Bills did on the ground against them, at least in the first half.
Cleve, the line opened 3.5. We had some money on the Chiefs to the point where it's more of a 3.25 now. A lot of people are saying, this line's not big enough. The Chiefs had played 2 straight decimated defenses. Here's my question. There's no way we get a hook with Mahomes come game day, right? Like, my question is, do we see a normal -3, -110, or do they still have to juice it towards Baltimore?
I don't know. I think this is what people are asking me what I thought the line would be. I thought it would be 3 versus Buffalo and then kind of 3 with juice to the Ravens. So this is exactly where I thought it would be. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a back and forth kind of all week sort of situation. I mean, I think if you put a blind resume and you didn't know who the quarterback was and you said, what's the line of these 2 teams from this season alone, this line would not be 3, it'd be a lot higher, right? But obviously, it's Patrick Mahomes, so you put, you kind of add that back in and you give them the benefit of the doubt, and so that's why the number kind of is the way it is. And it's just a matter of like how much do you respect Mahomes enough to lay it with the Ravens, even though I think it's pretty clear that the Ravens are the better team, kind of in most facets here. So that's really the situation you've got to put to yourself if you're going to make a bet either way. Do you go with kind of the actual who are the better team? Who's the better team? Who should be laying the higher number? Or is it just I'm just going to back Mahomes as a dog at a field goal or more, no matter what? I don't care who it is or what the situation is, and you've got to make that decision. So I don't know if there's a simple answer. Personally, I'm not doing anything with it right now. I don't have any sort of. I can see both sides of it. So I just think if we took away the last 2 weeks and is what it is, last 2 games. I think that people would have kind of run to take the Ravens here. If this was after what we saw with that Raiders game on Christmas, and even struggling early, going down big to Jake Browning and the Bengals, you would have run to take the Ravens here at 3.25. But we don't know because the last couple of games that the Chiefs look a lot better and Mahomes pushing it down the field. And we don't know if that's, the Chiefs kind of figuring it out, or if it's just a product of, Miami not having any defensive players left. And, same with Buffalo, talk about a bad matchup when you've got all your linebackers, out versus Travis Kelce in the kind of the middle of the field. It's just a terrible matchup. So you've got to weigh which is kind of true. And I'm not really sure I have an answer. I will say the one thing I'm curious about is the other side of the ball and how Spagnuolo versus Lamar plays out, because Spagnuolo is as good as any defensive coordinator that we've seen in a long time in terms of kind of game planning in these high leverage situations. And I just think you're going to get a lot of cover zero blitzes on Lamar and just let your elite corners kind of go one-on-one with guys like Zay Flowers and see if they can beat them. We know that Lamar has always struggled against the blitz. And if you look at cover zero numbers, and again, the sample size is really small. I mean, he's like 44th amongst quarterbacks in EPA versus cover zero. And we saw DeMeco Ryans really ratcheted up his blitz package in that last game against Houston to the point where the second half they really adjusted well and were able to beat it. But Spagnuolo is a different animal. So, and you've got a much better secondary and cornerback room. So that's the one that I'm really curious is how that's going to play out. I don't know. Again, there's so many variables here. I think it's a great chess match. So I'm looking forward to it.
Clark, let's answer Cleve's question. How do the Ravens offense match up to the Chiefs defense?
I think it's a tough matchup for the Ravens, relatively speaking. I mean, if you look at the teams that the Ravens have really dominated, the Lions, the Seahawks, the Bengals, and the Dolphins, and then in the second half against the Texans, all those teams are fairly not blitzing teams. They play a lot of zone. And I think you can say, well, the Texans did blitz, but the thing about that is when you're running defensive looks that you haven't been running all year, you're not at your best, right? So yes, the Texans blitzed Lamar, but that wasn't their natural looks. And so the Chiefs love to blitz. They love to play man. They want to get pressure on the quarterback. And I think Lamar has struggled with that type of defense throughout his career, like TA was saying. The question is going to be how well prepared he is to handle that. Like, what are the counter punches? Can they run the ball? If they can run the ball and win up front the way Buffalo did for most of that game, then I don't think it's going to really matter what coverages the Chiefs face. The Ravens should be scoring on most drives because once you get the run game going and have to dedicate yourselves to stopping the running back, now you've got Lamar, he fakes the handoff, he's opening things up and, he's running 20 yards. This is a very difficult offense to face if they can do what they want to do well. So I do think the coverages and the pressure looks will be tough for Lamar, but I think for that to matter, they're going to have to keep him in third and longs, and that's going to be where this game is won or lost, in my opinion. I think that's going to be tough for the Chiefs.
Suma, you brought up, you posted a link behind the scenes of how the Chiefs have gone heavy personnel, and it's worked against Dolphins and Bills team who were gutted up the middle, literally at both safety and linebacker. I can confidently say there is not a better combination of linebackers and safeties in the NFL than the Ravens have between Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen and Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. This is as good as it gets up the middle of a field. How do the Chiefs offense, how does it match up against the Ravens defense? And what do you expect from them?
Well, it's going to be tough out there. I mean, if you can get Patrick Queen in coverage, that should probably work all day. But there will be tough matchups because Mike McDonald likes to mix up his coverages like on a snap-to-snap basis. Lots of zone coverage, lots of disguises, creeper, stuff like that. So the matchup that the Chiefs might be looking at pre-snap might not be there post-snap. So I think in general, the Chiefs might still be able to run a little bit on the Ravens team. Ravens completely shut down the Houston Texans run game, but I think that Andy Reid might bring a slightly different dimension to it after we saw what he did yesterday against the Bills. In general, I think it will just come down to Patrick Mahomes dropping back and giving his best to dissect that Mike McDonald's post-snap zone coverage. That will be what this game will come down to. Trying to find Travis Kelce in the soft zone spots. I think the Ravens might probably put Kyle Hamilton on him a lot. Then it will come down to Rashee Rice clearing those zones, but will come down, and as boring as that sound, it will come down to Patrick Mahomes just beating Mike McDonald in this one.
Are these the two best defensive? Sorry, are these the two best defensive minds right now? McDonald, Spagnuolo. If you had one game on the line and you had to have one DC, I mean, I think those are the two best ones right now. So that's why I think it's going to be pretty fun to see who can dissect the strategies better.
That was my question, Cleve. Like KC usually has the coaching advantage when they play between Andy Reid and Spagnuolo, and the Ravens usually have the coaching advantage between Harbaugh, Monken, and McDonald. This is it, right? This is like an inanimate object versus unstoppable force, or whatever that saying is. There's no real coaching edge here, right? This is going to be just an incredible game.
Yeah, and kick Nagy out. He doesn't deserve
it. Listen, anyone who gives Nicole Hardman the ball on the 2-yard line is quite a decision. Let's move on to Detroit and San Francisco. And Cleve, I want to start with you with the injuries. It looks like no Jonah Jackson for this game. And the Lions were already down a guard before. And normally, again, it's an offensive guard. You can adapt when you have such a good O-line. But Arik Armstead and Javon Hargrave is as good as it gets at interior D-line. For San Fran, we got a taste of what their offense looks like without Debo. Now, there's people who are optimistic that he plays. I think it's safe to say he's not going to be 100%. Which injury do you think is more important? How does it affect each team?
Yeah, I mean, if kind of all things being equal, you'd rather have Debo in there. But I do think that the Jonah Jackson injury, and even Frank Ragnow came back and played, so I'm sure he'll play. But man, he's not 100%, and that's not what you want to have. I mean, this is a tough matchup in general for Jared Goff in this offense, going on the road to a defense that his bread and butter is kind of peppering the middle of the field. We know that that's where he makes his hay. He's one of the top 5 in the NFL, both in EPA and just attempts over the middle. But the Niners are number 1 in defending the middle of the field with Fred Warner over there kind of roaming. So that's just a bad matchup just in general. If you look at some of the opponents that Goff has faced this year, he struggled the most. I think 3 of his 4 worst EPA games have come against other defenses that are top 10 in defending the middle of the field. That's like his kryptonite. And then if you're going to include the fact that, your center is banged up and your guard could be out, and you're looking at, a big kind of downgrade as a Kyoto Awaska, is that his name, that came in there and struggled. We saw Kalijah Cansey get some pressure yesterday. So I think that's tough against a guy like Armstead and Hargrave, et cetera. So I just think the combination of the two makes this a really tough matchup for Goff in general. So even if Debo's not out there, I don't necessarily think you need to put up 30 points to win this game necessarily. So, and you've got enough weapons, and I think Jennings is a solid player. I mean, obviously it's not Debo. We're not saying that, but Jennings and McLeod and guys are pretty versatile, and you've got, obviously McCaffrey and Ayuk and Kittle. You have plenty of weapons. So I don't think, against some other teams, it might be an issue, but I'm not sure against this Lions defense, which is not going to put up much of a fight. I don't think, I don't think it's as necessary.
The comments has just been on fire, and I appreciate all the engagement, guys. And if you haven't done so yet, please like this content. It really helps boost us in the algorithm. Clark, you and I watched a lot of film this year, and I remember we had a conversation early in the year, and I told you who I thought the Lions offense reminded me of was the Saints once upon a time, where they can establish the run and put it on you in ways that they want, but they also work inside out. The Saints did it with Marquise Colston and Jimmy Graham, and I think the Lions do it with Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. How does this Lions team match up against the 49ers, who, if anything, their weakness is on the outsides, which Jordan Love was picking apart, and they're very strong up the middle because of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw? How are the Lions going to move the ball when the strength of their offense is the strength of the 49ers defense?
Yeah, they're going to have to win up front. I think this game pretty much comes down to whether or not the 49ers get pressure on Goff. We've seen how good Jared Goff is when he has time to operate in the pocket. Yes, the middle of the field will be tougher. The San Francisco linebackers are incredible in coverage. That's going to be tough for the Lions. But if Goff has all day back there, he's gonna find someone. These plays are designed to get people into space. And if it's not the middle of the field, it's not optimal. He'll still find people on the outside. Amon-Ra will get open on the outside against these corners. But if Jared Goff doesn't have time to operate in the pocket, then it could get really tough for the Lions. And I think if it also matters how well the 49ers do on offense, which is why I think Debo actually matters a ton to this spread, because he matters a lot to this offense. And the more likely it is that the 49ers can put scoreboard pressure on the Lions, the more likely it is the Lions are going to have to abandon the run game. And that's not good for what the Lions want to do, where you're relying on Goff play after play after play. So I think there's kind of a exponential impact here to the spread based on Debo's availability, and also whether it's raining, which I don't think it's supposed to be raining, so hopefully that's not an issue. But assuming the 49ers are at full strength with Debo and it's dry, I don't think the Lions defense matches up very well against what the 49ers want to do. And then that could end up having repercussions on how effective the Lions offense is. So I was excited to, about the idea of backing the 49ers, but, my numbers made it closer to like 5.5. So I think the number coming out at 6.5 was everybody already sees the things that I'm talking about right now. And so I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't any value on this one. So it's kind of about right for me.
Suma, we've been talking about for months how the Lions defense doesn't match up quite well against anybody. San Fran, I look at this and I'm like, oh, San Fran's going to do everything they want, right? If San Fran wants to run it down their throat, they're probably going to have success. And if they want to throw the ball, they're probably going to have success. How does the Lions put up any resistance against this 49ers offense?
Doing some rain dances and swear to the rain gods that's going to be raining, because I agree with everything that Clark has said. If it's dry, if it's Debo in, I'm majorly concerned with that defense. I just don't see how they would generate too many stops against this offense. I mean, last week or Saturday, we saw the Niners defense probably at their absolute bottom in terms of what they are capable of, and that included Wayne, that included Debo getting out at some point. I mean, Brock Purdy, there were some throws that were not even in the same ballpark of his targets, and I mean, dry game, Debo in, good luck, Lions defense.
Yeah, Cleve, there's one clear coaching edge here, right? Because Ben Johnson's a fantastic play caller, but Steve Wilkes is no slouch. He may not be a top end defensive mind, but he's got enough talent to put some resistance. Kyle Shanahan on Aaron Glenn has to be a gigantic mismatch, or is it Dan Campbell's aggression versus Kyle Shanahan's passiveness at times? Like, are we going to see the Dan Campbell kitchen sink game here? Fake punts, right? He has to steal some possessions against the 49ers here. Even with that, do you think the 49ers just have too large a coaching edge?
Yeah, I mean, I think Shanahan versus Aaron Glenn to me is more of a, we talked about this last week, like he's a really good players coach, like this, more of a CEO type than I think strategy wise defensively, like, nothing that there, let's be honest, the Lions are last in yards per play allowed the last, month and a half or so. Guys like Nick Mullins have thrown for 400 yards. Baker looked like an all-pro yesterday for the most part. The only times they show any resistance is either, a bad pass by the quarterback, like an interception that, now that was a great play, the last play of the game. I'm not going to take that away from Barnes, but in general, turnovers and just the offense's inability to capitalize on long drives the last couple of weeks have saved this defense. And some of that is just the home crowd that they're not going to have this week. You're not going to have that ability to not be able to check and all those sorts of things that great Detroit crowd had in the Dome. So you lose all those things on the road. And Dan Campbell's going to have to steal possessions, no doubt. But Kyle Shanahan has to be smart enough to realize that's coming. So every punt, like, don't even try and block a punt. Just play safe. I would play safe on every punt. And then just assume that there's going to be, a possibility that could be a fake. So they're going to have to do something to, I think, keep up here because we've seen the Lions, I don't think it's going to be another Ravens game, but we saw kind of a similar setup in that regard where just completely outmatched. So I think Campbell's going to have to do something.
Yeah, I think if the Lions are going to get something defensively, CJ Gardner-Johnson has been quietly one of the best ball hawks in football the last couple of years. He is a turnover machine. They were missing him for a lot of the season in the second half of the season, and he's back and he got a pick and he threw it at Baker and let him know that he picked him after trash talking him. Like we've seen at times, Brock Purdy can be bad, but that was with conditions, right? This is a lot more optimal, bad defense and dry conditions. If the Lions put up any resistance defensively, I think CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to have to play a role and maybe steal a pick or two. All right, guys, I think we did a good job previewing the games. It's so tough, right? By the time we get to the AFC NFC Championship games, the lines are fairly efficient. They're sitting on like 3 and 7, like the most key numbers, and it feels like you're limited in your betting options. But I think at the very least, we better informed everybody today who was listening. As a reminder, Forward Progress will be back again Thursday at 2 p.m. with our prediction show with Rob Pizzola, Eric Eager, Suma, and Hitman giving you their best bets. And you know what? Those guys are all going to be on cloud 9 because I think they clean swept their best bets last week, unlike a lot of other people in the media who got clean swept the other way.